Welcome to another episode of Regenerative Journey, where I share the stories of the amazing people regenerating the health of the soil, people, communities, and the planet through regenerative agriculture. This episode shares the story of Alderspring Ranch, the largest certified organic ranch in the United States. Near Salmon, Idaho, they raise 550 head of cattle split between 1,650 acre ranch and 46,000 acres of wild range. Yes, you heard that right, 46,000 acres of wild rangeland. They're practicing a unique form of cattle management they invented called in-herding. It began as a way to protect the cattle from the thriving wolf population, but has since evolved into a way to expose cattle to a hugely diverse array of nutrient-dense forage, regenerate the native landscape, and now aims to mimic the patterns and impact of this ecosystem's original grazers, the mountain bison. Stick around to the end to hear why this family chooses to raise cattle in a way that some would argue requires too much effort and expense. It surprised me, and I think it'll surprise you too. I hope you enjoy it. Let's jump in.
We invented in-herding first to keep our cattle safe from wolves. What we initially did was we herded our cattle across the landscape, and at night we'd bed them down in cow camp. But then we realized, wow, what a fine tool to maximize our cattle wellness by taking them on a huge diverse landscape of all these different grasses and all these different community types, while maximizing the grasses as well. But also we were able to hack the regeneration of a lot of our range grasses that were in decrease because of continuous grazing that we previously had. When we picked up this range landscape, the only place we could find our desirable perennial plants was inside sagebrush, where it was safe from a cow grazing it. And now we see those plants moving away from sagebrush, getting redistributed in the spaces between sagebrush. And then the light bulb finally came on and said, wait, this is the way nature did it before us. Let's even go one step further and find out what the bison did before we came and try to exactly mimic what they did. And that's where we are today. In-herding is very simple in principle. It's intentional and it's intensive herding of these animals. There's 408 beeves out here across a wild and very diverse landscape. In its simplest interpretation, we do management intensive grazing, or adaptive planned grazing we call it now, on Alderspring Ranch on our private ground. And we do cell grazing with polywire. It's an electric fence that's portable. You can roll it up like twine and move it. And as a result, you can control the movement and distribution of cattle across the landscape. What that means is very high density. You'll have 500 head on 1 acre. And so it's a very highly intense grazing system, but very, very short in duration. So we took that idea and brought it up here onto the wild ranges. So instead of polywire, we are now the agents of cattle control, and we're on horseback. So in its simplest terms, in-herding is just acting like polywire on horseback while moving across the landscape. How how does grazing in this way regenerate this landscape? And I'm going to start with the fact that we haven't been here for pretty close to 3 years now, and we're going to be here for a very short duration. And that is actually exactly how I think bison grazed this exact piece of real estate before they were extirpated from these lands. They were mountain bison, so they were actually roaming around this landscape, and that's herds of anywhere between 20 and 300, 400 head. And so we're kind of on the top end of that right now with 400 head of yearlings. That's probably equivalent to about 300 bison cows, but still it's very similar to what the vegetative impacts were on landscapes like this. So what that means is we have a grassland situation here that has basically evolved, co-adapted with large ungulate grazers that were very infrequent users of this landscape. So what I mean by that is they maybe came by and used a piece of ground like this every 3 to 10 years. So when we develop our grazing plans and think about how we're going to graze Hat Creek in a wise and responsible manner that's regenerative, the first thing we do is seek out what nature did before us. And when we find out those answers and begin to uncover that from trappers' records of bison distribution, where the skulls were located, where bison wallows are, what we know about current levels of bison in Yellowstone Park, we put all that information together. And from that, we actually develop a biomimicry plan that helps us learn how to graze these mountains. I think with that, we can kind of regenerate these endemic levels of species, these endemic plant communities, and even endemic soil biota that lived with those grazers those many hundreds of years ago. The biggest question I got when I talk about in-herding with people, how can that possibly pencil? They say to me, I'm just looking at your horse flesh you got out there. I'm just looking at all the horseshoes you go through. They're looking at all the people we got involved. They're looking at putting these cow camps up and moving camps. We move camps probably 10 times during the course of the summer. So those things are all costly. So what's the reason? Currently, the average farmer receives under 10% of the total value at the finished side of his crop. For us, that's completely different. Sure, it takes more infrastructure, but we get to keep around, 60 to 70% of the money. And that makes us sustainable and it makes us profitable. But there's some nuance there, and the nuance is that a person has to know what their grass is worth. So every time before we turn out these cattle, we weigh them. So at the end of the summer, we know exactly how we did that summer, so we can improve our management the following summer. The first reason, of course, was the wolves. We don't lose anything to wolves anymore. In fact, we stopped losing anything to anything. So it works. It definitely is worth it. But you got to invest in the management. And you know what? I love cattle, but I realize I got to love people more. Because when you work with a crew, they're going to work for you and take care of these cattle like you want them to. Because without that relationship and building that team, they'll never get your vision. And that vision is key to pulling this whole thing off. A lot of folks will ask me, why should I even care about where my beef comes from and how it's made or how it's raised? And we can say all these beautiful rosy things about caring for the environment and livestock husbandry and animal welfare, but really everything always boils down to ourselves. If you don't have your health, you don't have anything. I have many friends who are doctors who say it really is a nutrition problem. We lack nutrient density in our foods. And as a result, we have autoimmune disease. As a result, we have cancer. And these are unprecedented things, in the degree we're seeing them today. And we all have friends. We all have family who are in those places. So why? What's changed? And it's very obvious that what changed. Our food has just changed so dramatically in the past 100 years. Almost categorically, all food was a whole food production system based on living soils. And now we have a fake food production system, highly manufactured substances that we're eating. So food has changed dramatically, and as a result, so has our wellness. Sure, it matters to the planet. Sure, it matters for climate. Those are wonderful things. But it first matters to me as an eater of our beef because of my own wellness. That's the game changer. And that's how most of our customers come to find us. They try our beef and find out that, oh my gosh, I actually feel good on this. And I think, just looking at these cattle out here, I think it's because they're imbibing all the nutrient density off these mineral-rich volcanic soils that are living soils that have an intact soil biota. So why wouldn't we want to eat this? And why wouldn't we feel good on it?
I want to say a special thanks to Glenn and the whole Elzinga family for inviting me onto the ranch and allowing me to share their story. They have so much to teach us, and I hope that their story inspires others to reimagine what ranching and farming could look like if we were to shift the focus to human, animal, and ecosystem health. I encourage everyone to learn more about Alderspring Ranch, and I'll provide links in the show notes below to their website and social media sites. Please hit the like button down below if you enjoyed this episode, and subscribe to this channel if you want to see more like it in the future. And let me hear from you in the comments. Thanks for watching.